So it would be hard for anyone to dispute that at the moment the world is in a rapid state of transformation. So much is changing and so quickly. And within that landscape of change, artificial intelligence has seemingly made available so much knowledge and so much content within a really short space of time. This has also devalued traditional or conventional education, or at the very least thrown its authority radically into doubt. Like, I've taught in schools recently myself, and students will ask, well, why learn a language when we can just use AI to translate stuff? Or sadly, they look at the beleaguered state of their teacher in the public school, underfunded, under-resourced, under-supported system. And they question whether receiving the knowledge that the teacher is giving them from the whiteboard or from the blackboard will actually lead them to a future of health or prosperity, contentment, security, all the things that humans crave and want to learn, given the understandably often tired and uncertain faces of many teachers today. So why not just teach yourself, learn from an app instead? Why not just turn to the AI? And that, I suppose, is one of the least worst options chosen by many young people in crisis in the education system. But on the other hand, perhaps there is something good about the fact that we're questioning the authority of traditional educational settings, of the conventional model of education. I know myself as someone who graduated from Oxford with a top first-class degree, that I was very much the exception and not the rule in reaching that status or achieving that goal from my family background, from my socio-economic background, and from my own personal background too. And education has often been very elitist and exclusionary in its conventional forms. For example, globally, if you look at educational access divided between those living in urban areas versus rural areas. So it seems kind of amazing that any person now with a mobile phone or a laptop can now access vast content, myriad information sources, free courses, at the touch of a button. On the other hand, AI, and perhaps like more traditional conventional educational settings, it does need to perpetuate its own existence. It needs to fund its own existence, and it needs to cannibalize more and more of human experience and human communication in order to do that. We can predict that AI will continue to do that by sucking in data from increasingly apparently private or complex human interactions, spaces right now that appear to be offering genuine human interaction. And I'm specifically thinking of the field of life coaching, the massively burgeoning field of life coaching. Those spaces can be used to train, to take data and to train the ever more sophisticated and all-encompassing AIs in different ways. This is beginning to create jobs that are really primarily recruitment for the capturing of more data at the bottom of the pyramid. And this is disquieting because it is a vast pyramid scheme. So at the bottom are all kinds of people genuinely seeking answers to life's questions. They're seeking information, they're seeking knowledge, they're seeking know-how, they're seeking help, they're seeking guidance. There's a huge amount of desire at that level. And at the top are the people, who own the AI machine, who need all the people at the bottom asking their questions with their desire for the credible construction of their pyramid in perpetuity, for their wealth and for their authority, which is based on the claim that they have, so much knowledge from all the citizens, from all of the contributions from all humans. So what is the alternative? Now, I'm coming from a soul-centered, heart-centered perspective, which will become clear, but I'm just basically speaking as a human being. And the answer isn't looking for answers solely from within, not complete self-reliance to the extent that we turn off, all of our phones, our computers, we unplug, we go cold turkey on what AI has to offer us completely. So in Jewish thinking, I know that money is not seen to be the root of all all evil. It's actually neutral. But there's an incredibly strong prohibition on making money into a kind of god, into idolizing it. And we can think of AI in a similar way. I guess there was a kind of awe experienced by people beholding the pyramids in the times when they were built. So those vast structures that could have seemed quite otherworldly, or kind of not like a human creation, but like something mistaken for a godly creation, when they were viewed from the bottom, or perhaps maybe at the beginning of the building process, when the lines were being laid out in the sand, people looked at the initial lines of brick and they thought, this will never dwarf us. Look at how many of us there are. This structure, however big, it will never be bigger than us. But then so many people died in the ruthless construction, most of all the Hebrews. All that came to matter was not human life, not the lives of those at the bottom, but the building, the model. So we should not surrender to the authority of the AI because it claims to have, or to be working towards having, all of the answers, to be this great structure with all of the vision, omniscience from omnipresence, like a kind of panopticon, an all-seeing eye. And we know that Moses left the country of pyramids to save the soul of humanity. He had seen and he had experienced how the building of the pyramids turned people into murderers and slaves, and tried to steal from them their spiritual reality, taking so many lives, making so many sacrifices of humans en route. We must be like Moses. So in the following political ways, we need to ask God for our path, because only God has the untold intelligence and knows us inside out. King David sings in the Psalms that he knit us, and Rabbi Nachman's way is hitbodedut. So Rabbi Nachman, my guide, holy soul, his way was to just speak to God as you would your closest friend, every day, as often as needed. Because individually or collectively, we do not know as God does. God, who is one and no other, is above all that we do, so that even the pyramids, with their gigantic servers, their ever greater knowledge of our spoken world, they will seem tiny. But does this diminishing of the scale of the pyramids then make us tiny, infinitesimally small? Paradoxically, it doesn't, because when we know how small we are, that can remind us of the greatness of our personal connection with God, God within and God without. Jewish tradition says that Moses was chosen by God precisely because he rejected seeing from an exalted perspective, or from God's perspective. He had divine inspiration, but he stood with humanity in solidarity. So at the moment, it would be hard to dispute that we live in quite a mad world, with much pyramid building. And Rabbi Nachman, the holy storyteller, he told a story about two people who realized that they must live in the land of the mad. Indeed, they must consume that year's tainted harvest, tainted grain that will make them go mad too. However, they agree to mark each other's foreheads so that they will always be conscious of each other's madness. So I say that we should make this mark now, Jew or non-Jew. The time then comes when we will be grateful for this mark of difference on the other's forehead. The mark on the forehead is almost like circumcision in Jewish tradition. It's the mark of deference to a tradition, to a path or a way, the Jewish one, which biblical prophecy says will ultimately attract all nations and all of humanity. The prophecy says that the nations, the non-Jew, will tug at the sleeve of the Jew and ask, can we go with you? And it is a mark to say that we know that we're the same as everyone else, because we share the same harvest of madness, the same place within the madness, and yet we are also different. We will hear other voices. We'll hear this other voice that is going to say, we've done away with teachers. No need for them now. We've done away with leaders. We have this wonderful machine. It's is democratic and it's built by all of you. We don't need teachers anymore. We don't need leaders. And terribly, this voice may say, look around you where we are. And here we are at the very bottom of the pyramid, looking around, and look at the kind of equality that you all have now. And from exactly this reality, with us standing there with the mark on our forehead, looking at the other with the mark on his or hers, is from this reality, from this standpoint, is prophecy to come, the Mashiach, and the era of redemption and peace, if we merit it.